You once believed that remaining silent while shouldering another person's pain was proof of noble virtue, that each labored breath of your own was a miraculous light illuminating other wounded hearts. You thought that empathetic capacity to the utmost absorbing another's suffering as if it were purifying balm was a divine gift, a holy mission bestowed upon only the most exalted souls, but the truth is different. That light was never a torch of power. It was a smoldering flame that consumed a wound never allowed to heal. From earliest childhood, you grew up in a room filled with silent tones, your mother's sighs behind a closed door, your father's gaze concealing anger. As a child, you learned to listen to the breath of the space itself, pressing your ear to the cold wall to hear each pulse of emotion, both a bridge and an invisible shackle. Unaware, you stepped into the role of healer, gathering every fragment of someone else's feeling to keep yourself alive, while you were the one truly lost in an emotional labyrinth. Then one day, you performed the ritual of forgiveness on yourself. You smiled gently at others' mistakes. You embraced another's pain as if cradling a precious gem. You draped yourself in the most splendid cloak of compassion to hide the screaming rage of the abandoned child within the dark. Forgiveness became a sacred rite. Each time you said, "I understand," it felt like an oath that locked you inside a room without a key. Deep down, you believed that if you ever stopped forgiving, you would lose the most precious things, love and acceptance. You feared that withdrawing your helping hands would render you invisible, erased from anyone's emotional map. So you continued to endure, continued your silence, even offering your own hurt as a gift upon the altar of sacrifice. But the light you bestowed was not freedom's light, it was the light that nourished darkness. Every time you forgave without real change, you unknowingly aided those who exploited compassion to mask manipulative selves. You enabled them to keep abusing until they found peace in your pain. You became a servant to an endless drama of irresponsibility. Imagine a heart. On the outside it gleams like flawless crystal, ever guiding lost souls. Inside it shatters like broken mirror shards, harboring countless fragments of suffering. You wonder why you cannot heal your own wound, because you poured all your energy into healing others, pulling them out of the abyss, while you remained locked in a sealed room where no one heard your silent cries. Then a moment of awakening struck like lightning. You suddenly realized that unconditional forgiveness was not a sign of inner strength, but an invisible chain. You saw to the deepest, darkest corner of your soul, the rage repressed, the hurt buried, the self-respect turned to ashes. You understood that forgiving without safeguarding yourself only drove you further from the past back to your true self. And so you decided to stop. For the first time, you let go of the peace shield you had carried. You said no to empty apologies and drew clear boundaries on the emotional bridge. You allowed yourself to cease absorbing another's suffering, turning your care inward once more. This was not cruelty, but self-salvation, a journey leading you from the labyrinth of pain back to your most authentic light. When you stopped forgiving, you did not lose light. Instead, that light now shone inward, illuminating the very shards of your wound. You learned to recognize that forgiveness is a choice, not an obligation. That true forgiveness happens when both sides genuinely commit to change, not when you unconditionally nurture someone unready to let go. You reclaimed each lost fragment of yourself, each beat of your heart wearied by sheltering another. This journey was not gentle. You faced the undercurrents of regret, the alarming dreams of locked doors and broken bridges. Yet those dreams became gentle counsel. Walk through them. Let the old bridge collapse so you may build a new, sturdier one for yourself. And when you returned to the world, you were no longer an infinite servant, but a guardian of your inner realm. Your power no longer lay in self-sacrifice, but in the ability to uphold your limits and say no at the right moment. You radiated a different light, light of self-respect, light of wholeness. That light did more than attract others to admire it. It guided them back to themselves. They ceased exploiting your compassion, for they understood that your emotional boundary was now not easily crossed. And you, once the timid child cowering in the shadows of pain, became a living legend of the journey to rise from wounds. That legend does not recount how many you saved, but how you learned to save yourself by honoring your limits, forgiving when your soul was truly ready, and lighting your own life first, so that your light might spread everywhere, not only illuminating but also leading lost hearts home. From then on, you realized the most sacred mission is not to bear suffering, but to tend the inner flame of self-love, of courage to say no, and of the magical power to turn wounds into true light. That is the legend that never fades. You once scattered forgiveness as though strewing ceremonial flowers along a desolate path, believing that boundless compassion would redeem broken souls and mend rifts with no return. Yet you never realized that this very mercy turned into invisible shackles, binding you to a harsh verdict, serving those who never change. Every "I'm okay" you uttered was a brick adding to the wall that separated you from yourself, costing you every fragment of your tiny freedom. You feared abandonment so fiercely that you silenced your inner voice and snuffed out your core flame to feed another's emotional hunger. In long nights, you questioned why your heart felt so heavy, why your offered smile brought no joy but deepened the wound. You believed forgiveness was the sacred duty of a merciful heart. You accepted every excuse, tolerated every belated apologies, as if forgiveness were the sole ticket to keep a connection alive. But forgiving when there is no real change on the other side only creates an emotional debt ledger, one that cannot be settled with empty words. Those who exploit your compassion continue to torment you with hollow promises. Promises that today will be different, that next time will be better. And you keep giving because you fear the loneliness that would follow their departure. However, each time you accepted the words, "I'm sorry," without witnessing genuine action, you inadvertently abetted a deceitful play. Such people learned to rely on you as a safe harbor where apologies would be accepted without reciprocation through deeds. They came to you like addicts, craving the high of exploitation, only to flee at dawn, leaving you in silent emptiness. You became the silent witness to an endless cycle of irresponsibility, a performance with no audience, in which you alone served tirelessly. The fear of losing love and acceptance drowned you in a tangle of resignation. You believed that holding on to the key of forgiveness would keep you in another's heart, that if you relinquished it, you'd turn into a ghost without identity. Yet only when you realized that key didn't unlock someone else's heart, but instead locked your own, did you find the courage to let go. Releasing it did not make you callous, but made you the guardian of your being, someone who sets the rules in the kingdom of the soul. Imagine a silent prison whose four walls are the words, "I understand," each brick built from your unconditional forgiveness. In that prison, you are both prisoner and jailer. Each day you interrogate yourself with the question, why do I keep forgiving? The answer is always fear. Fear of abandonment, fear of hatred, fear of being unworthy alone. Yet that very fear enslaved you to compassion, turning generosity into punishment. Then, after countless sleepless nights, A flash of insight appeared. Forgiveness is not a mission or obligation. It is deserved only when met with true remorse and a commitment to respect your boundaries. You saw that compassion is not infinite endurance, but a precious gift given rightly when the recipient values it and does not exploit it. You drew clear limits in the ether and marked your relationships with the awareness that you deserve respectful treatment. From that moment, you escape the prison through the gateway of decision. Say no when necessary, refuse apologies not backed by action, refuse endless tolerance of mistakes. You ceased being the emotional servant of others and became the master of your own heart. You learned to forgive those truly deserving, those who genuinely repent and strive to change, and shield yourself from preventing the free flow of your own feelings. This journey was not easy. You endured the pain of watching once close bonds dissolve. You heard again the echo of hollow apologies in your memory. You encountered loneliness when you chose to stand for yourself, refusing to endure cries of, "Please give me another chance," only to receive indifference. Yet, in that solitude, you discovered inner strength. You don't need others' permission to live. You grant yourself rest, protection, and love. When compassion is no longer shackles, you view the world with awakened eyes, eyes that distinguish genuine empathy from exploitation. You don't lose your merciful heart. Instead, you keep it pristine and whole for reciprocal relationships. You become a symbol of courage, daring to abandon the old to embrace what is truly worthy. And when you extend forgiveness at the right moment to the right person, you not only liberate yourself from emotional prison, but you also ignite the power of healing in others, demonstrating the clear lesson that forgiveness must stand on responsibility and respect, not on unconditional obligation. That is when compassion transforms from prison into a gateway to freedom, from shackles into the key that unlocks the potential for change. You had dispensed forgiveness as if scattering ceremonial flowers along a cold, desolate path, believing that boundless compassion would redeem broken souls and mend irreparable rifts. Then one day, a flash of insight struck your consciousness. If you cease to forgive, you might lose what you believed to be the foundation of life itself, love. Yet, this was not a cunning ploy or malice, but the powerful call of the self urging you to return home to yourself. When you paused, no longer offering your left cheek, after countless turns, an internal earthquake shook your being. The bricks of emotional separation shattered, and the peace mask you had worn so long fell away, revealing the rage buried beneath the veneer of kindness. You felt your body tremble, your heart pounding as if ready to burst, each pulse heated by an explosion of energy. This moment was not the dramatic climax of vengeance, but the overture to an awakening symphony. Genuine light seeped through the cracks, illuminating the fragment you thought lost forever. Emotions suppressed for so long surged back whole, unrestrained, uncloaked. In that instant, you realized that each time you chose keeping the peace, you had buried your primal anger under a facade of calm. You once believed that external harmony would bring internal tranquility, but when the mask cracked, you saw that this false peace only masked pain without healing it. You may have feared the raw exposure of the self, fearing that if rage were released, you would lose control and harm others. Yet that fear had kept you from living authentically. When the mask shattered, you were invited into the land of truth, where you no longer played the role of the good person you imposed upon yourself, but stood as your genuine, unadorned, and powerfully sovereign self. In that realization, you discovered that anger is not the enemy, but a herald, a biological, equitable emotion broadcasting from the subconscious to alert you that your boundaries have been breached. By seizing unconditional forgiveness, you did not become cruel. You became courageous enough to acknowledge that you too deserve respect. That moment may come with tears, salty drops of liberation. Tears do more than cleanse pain. They nourish the soil of the soul where the seeds of self-love can take root. You wept not from weakness but from the courage to face your deepest wounds and cultivate new hope. After the mask's collapse, you entered profound silence. There was no echo of hollow apologies, no resonance of "I understand." Only you remained, wrapped in tranquil stillness, beckoning you to hear the quietest voice within, the voice of self-respect, of forgotten dreams, and of the yearning to live fully. In that awakening mist, the path ahead grew clearer than ever. You realized you are not one who forgives mindlessly, but one who sets boundaries. You have the right to say no to those who trample your heart, and the right to live for yourself before offering love to anyone else. This journey is not for the faint-hearted. You must shed every protective shell to confront your inner darkness. You must learn to embrace anger, pain, and loneliness, because only by touching the depths of suffering can you rise with compassion for yourself. As you moved forward, you carried the shattered mask shards as emblems of strength. Those fragments did not mark permanent breakage, but symbolized rebirth. From this point you knew that, when necessary, you could don the peace mask voluntarily, not to conceal, but to choose wisdom in each circumstance. Finally, you discovered that the moment of mask shattering is not an ending, but the beginning of a new chapter. You abandoned the old script, embraced your innate power, and set forth on a personal journey of freedom and wholeness. It is the epic melody of a self fulfilled, where anger and forgiveness coexist in harmony, creating life's most vibrant masterpiece. You plunged into the depths of darkness within your consciousness, traversing each chamber of buried memory where anger lay hidden like nameless ghosts. In that profound night of the mind, you confronted accumulated regrets, every shattered emotion jabbing at you whenever you dared to touch it. Dreams became surreal paintings, a wooden door slammed shut with a rusty key, lost and useless. A broken bridge spanning an abyss with no hope for continuation. A mirror engulfed in flames, reflecting your fragmented self in blurred outlines. These images were not mere symbols, but a resounding cry. Unconditional forgiveness had become a tool of torture, plunging you into an unending cycle of pain. You realized that whenever you overstepped your own boundaries, you bound yourself in chains of endurance. Each time you opened your heart so fully you forgot your limits, you lost yourself in another's labyrinth of emotion. The personal torch, your inner light, seemed to have been extinguished by clouds of sorrow. Yet, it was precisely in that dark chasm that your inner flame flared brighter than ever. That was the moment you ceased to be an anonymous servant and became the keeper of your own guiding torch. True strength did not reside in your self-imposed suffering, but in your courage to say no when your inner voice insisted. Personal boundaries were etched like a sharp line, separating you from emotional chaos. You began constructing invisible walls to safeguard every inch of your soul against unreasonable demands. Each time you held your ground, that torch flashed in you, a warm flame lighting your way through the long night, helping you distinguish genuine kindness from disguised exploitation. The journey through the darkness was far from gentle. You felt your body tremble as you faced your deepest wounds, hearing echoes of hollow apologies in your mind. You traversed rugged, emotional terrain where muddy feelings dragged your feet and deep scars almost caused you to collapse. Sometimes tears slid down your cheeks in the middle of the night, each drop not only cleansing pain but also testing whether you still had the strength to rise again. Gradually, you learned to regard anger as a companion rather than an enemy. Instead of avoiding it, you welcomed it, listening to its primal roar of injustice and boundary violation. You responded with clarity instead of blind reaction. You invited that anger to sit beside you, looked it squarely in the eye, and asked what message it bore. Then you established a new rule. You could feel anger, but not let it dictate your actions. You honored your emotion without granting it destructive power. From the abyss, you discovered the lesson of selective forgiveness. Forgiveness was no longer a forced obligation, but a gift reserved for those truly deserving, those who recognized their faults, changed their behavior, and respected your limits. Forgiveness became real magic, liberating not only the one who harmed you, but first and foremost yourself. You stepped through the door, once locked behind you, your spirit's luggage now far sturdier. The greatest wonder was realizing that your inner self is a sacred temple. There, boundaries and freedom are not opposites, but coexist to celebrate each individual's true worth. You understood that only by protecting your limits could you love fully without losing yourself. Your personal torch thus did not merely illuminate your own path, but spread light for wandering souls. Others recognized that your power lay not in infinite sacrifice, but in transparent boundaries and compassion balanced by self-respect. As you advanced, the personal flame became a symbol of inner freedom. You no longer feared the darkness, for you knew it was within the darkness that your torch was tested and forged into an undying light. Every step through the dark was a verse in the anthem of your journey, where you sang your own epic, a tribute to pain transformed into strength and to boundaries firmly established. You did not fear losing your way, because your inner light itself was the guiding map. Ultimately, you realized the journey through the dark is not merely a trial, but a rite of passage for your character's rebirth. Each time you said no was an act of self-love. Each affirmation of your heart's value. The personal torch did not belong merely to you, but stood as the mark of freedom the moment you dared to stand up from your wounds, and as the endless path leading back to yourself. When you first stood tall after hundreds of bends of resignation, you realized that refusing to forgive the unworthy is not a mark of cruelty, but proof of a soul restored to wholeness. Forgiveness ceased to be an endless river and became instead a ritual of shedding the invisible chains that had bound you for so long. Pain that once lay buried in darkness now transformed into the fuel that fires your true self, forging you into the king or queen of your inner realm, where authority is measured not in applause from others, but in the respect you bestow upon yourself. In that moment, you heard the echo of a vow. Henceforth, you would never regret drawing boundaries with those who betrayed you. Each time someone implored you to forget their transgressions, you replied with calm resolve instead of concession. You learned to distinguish between genuine love and disguised exploitation, between true compassion and deceitful sweetness. When the final mask dropped away, you looked in the mirror and saw no imposter left, only yourself, an integrated being, uncluttered by the shards of a painful past. Over time, pain ceased to be a dark scar and became a badge of honor, marking every trial you overcame. You understood that each wound that almost brought you to your knees now served as a launching pad, propelling you to greater heights. In countless moments of betrayal, when you expected to yield and ask for forgiveness, you instead channeled that very hurt into newfound strength. This, you discovered, is the magic of inner sovereignty, mastering the pain so that it can no longer master you. You began to lay down steadfast life principles, Respect yourself before craving respect from others. Love yourself fully before giving your heart away. Every no you spoke was not a refusal to connect, but an affirmation that healthy relationships must rest on fairness and truth. You learned to keep a safe distance from those who would exploit your generosity and welcome those willing to share burdensome struggles, those prepared to walk beside you rather than merely take. The path of self-sovereignty demanded that you weather inner storms. There were days when memories of the old wounds flickered like terrible dreams, tempting you to revert to the person who once yielded so easily. But you smiled inwardly and reminded yourself, I have moved beyond that. I deserve better. With each recovery from a setback, you honed your courage and resilience, striding forward with ever greater pride. Simultaneously, you discovered the power of self-compassion, forgiving yourself for past mistakes, for trusting the unworthy, for hesitating to say number. You realized that forgiving yourself is the highest act of mercy because you had mistaken suffering for destiny and stoicism for glory. In the moment of self-forgiveness, you cleared away shame and regret, buried within, returning to your unshadowed essence, unencumbered by bygone pain. In that self-forgiveness, you felt revival pulse through every fiber of your being. Fear and haunting memories lost their grip, and you stood free to choose how to live, openly, honestly, and with vibrant passion. Each new day became a blank page, and you held the pen no longer fearing smudges of past regrets. Your inner sovereignty manifested even in the smallest acts, thanking yourself silently, nurturing your own needs, safeguarding your sleep and solitude. You understood that sovereignty is not about wielding power over others, but about illuminating your own spirit, granting you the right to stand firm on your chosen path. In that realization, you were not merely living, you became the artist of your life, painting tomorrow's canvas with the brightest hues. Eventually, you awakened to a profound truth. A new legend was being born within you, one of triumph, not born of external glory, but of the undying flame kindled in your soul. Every turn inward for light, every steadfast boundary, and every measured forgiveness wove together the epic of personal victory carved out of the darkest depths. That story needs no crown or fanfare. It shines purely by its own fierce, unbreakable journey. Tomorrow, if someone asks you, who made this hand tremble and this heart ache? You will only need to smile and answer, I did. For you dared to face your pain, to forge yourself in the fire of trials, and at last arose renewed and stronger than ever. This is inner sovereignty, the power of a free soul capable of mastering its destiny and burning as a guiding torch that never flickers. And that is the journey each of us can undertake, from the darkness of unconditional forgiveness, where we were once shackled by pain, to the dungeon of self-protection, where the ego is forged anew with every number. When the final mask falls, we realize we are not anonymous servants, but architects of our inner world rule, makers, keepers of the flame of self-respect, and guardians of the precious jewel of our true selves. Do not let the fear of loss dictate your life. Do not treat forgiveness as a mandatory duty, but as a choice meant to honor your own worth and peace. Let every act of shedding old chains be a rebirth, allowing pain to become the launch pad that transforms you into a stronger, more whole version of yourself. Use the energy of anger as the fire that tempers your resolve, and the balanced light of compassion to guide those who have lost their way. This journey is not easy, yet its value far exceeds any challenge. For when you dare to face yourself, dare to leave behind shallow relationships, and dare to embrace both darkness and light, you will discover latent strengths you never knew you possessed. You will witness the miracle of self-compassion. When you forgive yourself, every old wound is refreshed by a stream of new hope. And once you stand firm upon the milestone of inner sovereignty, you become more than yourself. You become an inspiration to souls yearning for freedom. They will see in your eyes a promise. If I can master my pain, anyone can step out of the darkness. That message is more powerful than any sermon, because it springs from personal experience and is tempered by unrelenting determination. If you are seeking a place to begin that journey, or simply wish to help spread the story of inner sovereignty, then press the subscribe button and ring the notification bell today. We will continue to walk alongside you through profound stories, practical suggestions, and timely encouragement, so you never lose your way in the labyrinths of emotions. Give yourself the chance to be strong from within, whole at heart, and honored by your own inner voice. Your story deserves to be told, and your personal light deserves to shine. Subscribe now so you won't miss a single chapter of the journey to awakening and self-mastery. Together, we will turn scars into badges of honor and ride on into the legend of undying rebirth. Click, subscribe, and let us begin a new chapter. Your chapter, the chapter of freedom, the chapter of inner sovereignty. Let this journey stand as proof of the power of a resilient heart and an unquenchable spirit. We will meet again in the next videos.